This is the Skeptical Student Show, created as a part of Podcast Lab by India Film Project in association with Anchor by Spotify.
You can always listen to the episode on Fast Forward and follow the podcast to never miss new episodes. And while you're at it, don't forget to rate the podcast a 5-star.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Skeptical Student Show. Queer is an inclusive umbrella term representing a range of sexual and gender identities. But how many of you have had a queer collective at your place of education? I'm not sure many, but I'm lucky enough to have one at my college, and that is why, to raise the queer collective consciousness, I have with me Sue, the president of Hindu College Queer Collective. I'm happy to have you here, Sue, and also to learn from you what a queer collective is and what all it does.
Hi, Gavish. Thank you so much for inviting me. So, I'll answer your question. A queer collective is a student organization that seeks to provide a safe and open space for the discussion and expression of the diverse identities of people on the LGBTQIA plus spectrum.
All right, and why do you think there is a need to have these queer collectives in the first place?
Right. So, there are a lot of students who come and they're new to the campus and who also identify on the queer spectrum. So, it gives them a sense of community and they can learn more from their university experiences. And that's why there is a need for having a queer collective or a support group of sorts for them.
All right, the importance is very much evident. Then why do you think there is a dwindling number of collectives across India? Or why is this importance not really seen by everyone?
Right. I think everyone sees the importance of having a queer collective. It's just that people have to come forward and start in their colleges, start the discourse on queer issues in their colleges. It becomes easier when you're living in metropolitan cities, but when you come from a state university, for example, it becomes very difficult for people there to start because of lesser visibility of queer people.
Okay, understood.
Blast from the past segment.
And as a matter of fact, I know that Hindu College Queer Collective is fairly new in its inception. So I wanted to know, how did the HCQC come into being from idea to establishment?
Right. So Hindu College Queer Collective or HCQC was started by a few queer identifying students of Hindu College. And we formed it in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. We started it as a LGBTQ plus resource cell of Hindu. It started off as an informal WhatsApp group where we had a bunch of queer people and we discussed on further discourse of this collective, and various aims and objectives were discussed, and collectively we formulated this collective to expand and have a council, expand and have allies who are non-LGBTQIA students but who are interested in this cause.
That is great. So anyone who is willing to go for establishing a queer collective can definitely take notes.
Problem pinpoint segment.
And talking about problems, it is often claimed that a queer collective is restrictive and it is restricted to the elite. Is this true? And if it may or may not be, how do you make it more inclusive?
So, Gavish, I don't think a queer collective is a space that is supposed to be elite, but truly for people who are coming, the incomers, the freshers who are coming, they might find spaces like these very elite and very restrictive. But a queer collective such as ours, we are open and we always strive to make it as inclusive, as comfortable, to the incoming students, because we know that students in Hindu College come from different parts of India and even outside India, and they come from a very different cultural background, very different social conditioning. So we try to make them comfortable in orientations, make them comfortable in our sessions, the introductory sessions that we conduct.
That is great, and I am a witness to that. Coming to my next question, how do you guys cater to those who are hesitant or who are hesitating to join the collective in the fear of being outed or bullied?
Right. So our queer collective, for example, runs in two parallels. There is one official or the working group where we have everyone the LGBTQIA people, the people who don't belong on the spectrum but are there as allies. And we also have a queer exclusive group, a queer only group, where we just have queer people. So when you just have people who are from the spectrum, you feel that you belong there and you are not hesitant to come out. You are not afraid that what will people say, because you have people who are like-minded and who have gone through the same kind of oppression that you've been to, the same kind of trauma as a queer kid growing in India. So it serves as a support group of sorts, and people become very comfortable, being open in the queer only group. So we give these details in our introductory session or when we are having the orientation for the collective for the students to know, so that even though they are closeted in college otherwise, they can be open and can make friends in the queer only group. And because we have both allies and queer people in the official or the working group, nobody can figure out who is an ally and who is queer. So that way, you can also be part of the working or the official group of the QC.
Impressive. And I was wondering, have things actually gone south ever? What if there is a leak, or what if a person accidentally or intentionally leaks the chats or someone's identity? What is the course of action to be followed then?
Right. So, fortunately, in our collective, there has never been a breach of privacy. And also, to prevent it, we have measures. Whenever the new incomers are joining, we post messages on the group. We make them aware that this is a restrictive group, this is a discrete group, and people could be not out to their families, not willing to be out in the college either. So you have to be mindful of that. And we strictly prohibit any screenshots circulating from the conversation that happen on the queer only group. And in case that somebody leaks it or somebody tells it to a third party, we have a disciplinary action that we take against them, an equity action that we take against them. Their membership is revoked, and they're also reported to the disciplinary committee of the college. And we warn other societies of such a person. So that is what discourse that we follow for now.
All right. It's actually very assuring to see how you have formulated things and rules of procedures in place. Moving on, a recent UNESCO report studying sexual orientation and gender identity based bullying in Tamil Nadu raised some alarming figures. 60% of the survey's respondents were bullied in middle and high school, and I'm sure the picture is not much different for the rest of India. What would you say about dealing with queer phobia at educational institutes? And what role does a collective play in the same?
We come from a country that is inherently queerphobic, because that's how everyone is conditioned at their homes, at their schools. So I think, and of course, the figures that you mentioned, 60%, that was conducted by UNESCO, it is very alarming. And I don't think it's just 60%, it's even more than that. 60% is just a figure that we were able to calculate. What can be done, I think, needs to be done at the very beginner level, that is having a good inclusive sex education or gender studies in the school. I think what would be the best for these schools to have, they can replace their moral studies syllabus with something like a gender studies syllabus, because I think that is the need of the hour.
Yes, I agree with you. I think bringing these things and these terms and this knowledge into our education is actually going to be an effective way. And I also think being part of a collective will also give you a support group or the much needed solidarity in tough times.
Response segment.
Moving on to the next segment, wherein we discuss upon a response which has been received from a listener. So, I had put up on my story about the recent case wherein NCRT had faced backlash for uploading a gender neutrality and queer synthesizing manual on its website, which had been taken off within hours due to backlash from a particular group. Now, the question at hand was, what does it say about India? Are we not open for change? Or was this move too radical?
So Vikramaditya responds by saying that
Let me tell you an interesting story from Mahabharata about the character Shikandi. She is an LGBTQ character. Her real name was Shikandini. And she was born a female but then later changed to male. It has been in our history, and those who are opposing either don't know about their own history और दे आर nuts, to be very honest, they are nuts. और कितने स्टेप्स लगेंगे मुझे ये समझ नहीं आ रहा. इट्स नॉट रैडिकल एट ऑल. इनफैक्ट हम लोग लेट हो गए ये करने में. नहीं तो it could have been done earlier also. It's not radical, it's not overburdening, and ये शुरुआत हुई. The first step to learn more about the LGBTQ group.
So, Sue, what do you think about the question and the response?
Right, Kavish. So I think it was a very disheartening move that NCRT followed, which baffles me to think that you can have a regular sex education that you're doing in school, but how would it not be appropriate for students to learn about queer identities in that same sex education curriculum that these schools have? And as you pointed out, that there have been evidences in history of India that queerness was so open. But even if we keep that aside, even if we did not have evidences of society being very open about queer identities, this is a modern age time. We need to progress. We need to, include these stuff in our institutions, education, and schools. So this was a very disheartening move by NCRT.
Exactly, and even the High Court of Madras had criticized NCRT for taking this down because a progressive move such as this one, which is actually targeted for the collective good, can't really be taken down by arm twisting done by a particular group of people just because they are not satisfied. And also, I think the people who are actually unaware of India's rich past are just feeding into or believing on the British imparted propaganda.
Seeking Solution segment.
Now, talking about solutions, what is your view on intersectionality?
Intersectionality is, when there is an acknowledgement that everyone has their own unique experiences of discrimination and oppression, and that we must consider everything and anything that can, marginalize people. For example, gender, race, class, sexual orientation, physical ability, etc. So a person is made of an amalgamation of different socio-political identities, and that's where intersectionality comes into play. So, a person who is queer could also be disabled. A person who is queer could also come from a religious background that is oppressed or marginalized in the mainland of the country. So, that is what is my understanding of intersectionality.
Great. Thank you for sharing with us your perspective. Also, as we spoke earlier, fun fact is that even allies can join the collective. So, how can these allies help? Or what exactly is their role in this cause? Also, you can begin by defining the term ally just for those who are not aware.
Right. So, any group of people who want and are interested in supporting a cause that they are passionate about, they might not necessarily belong to that community that they are trying to help or be an ally to, but their passion, their understanding of that community forces their consciousness to sort of be a help to that community. So that is the definition of an ally. An LGBTQ plus ally would be someone who is passionate about queer issues, understands the hardships of the community, and is there to stand up for the community, stand with the community in times of needs. And the question that you asked, allies can join the queer collective. Of course, we have kept this provision that allies or people who are not necessarily on the spectrum can also become a part of the queer collective so that they can pursue their passion of helping the cause or the community they are interested in helping and becoming an ally to. And the kind of work that an ally could expect to do in a collective is, first of all, learn and unlearn. There are a lot of things that an ally must learn and unlearn because although they have read enough about the hardships of the community in various places, they can never have the lived experiences of the people belonging to that community. So it's important for them to closely analyze, closely question, and closely observe what they know and what is the reality on ground, what kind of things that they can expect in the collective to do. So our collective works in different verticals like sponsorship, content, research, design, and all these verticals work closely in association with each other to create awareness through Instagram, through other places, through other platforms. And these allies are expected to join one of these verticals and contribute to the awareness programs that we do. We also keep conducting ally sensitization programs from time to time to keep our allies updated and to expand their understanding of what the queer community is and what issues are pertinent to this community at present.
Rightly said. And I think the role of an ally becomes all the more important. This only goes on to show us that the allies and the LGBTQI members can coexist peacefully and support each other. And also, being queer is a reality, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And which brings me to my last question. How do you think we can expand awareness regarding the queer cause in these tough times, considering that these would be the first steps and we have a long way to go? So, the times are particularly tough because we are, as you know, surrounded by orthodox people, homophobic people, and whatnot. So, how would you like to answer that?
So I think for any movement to flourish, for any discrimination to go away, I think what Ambedkar said to educate, agitate, and organize, I think these three things are necessary for any movement to become successful, come in the limelight, come in the mainstream. As speaking of the collective at a college level, I think we have started collective in the pandemic time, so it was already tough for us to bring people together. So I think we've started from a tough time, so we have a sort of experience how tough could it be to have the collective running. And what in a homophobic setup we can do is to raise awareness as much as possible, to be visible, to be out there, so that it becomes normal, it becomes normalized, it becomes normative for people, and it's no more alien to them. There are a lot of people who come to Hindu, who come from backgrounds, who come from places and regions where their social or socioeconomic privilege did not allow them, or socioeconomic barriers, I would say, did not allow them to learn about the community. But if we keep on doing these visible kind of awareness programs, the people who have had a social conditioning about a certain things can also change and learn and grow.
That is true. And as you spoke about a certain kind of people, I think even if they were exposed to the community before, they might just be in denial, and the collectives also help to drive away this denial.
Exactly. We try to bust myth. We try to do as much in our capacity as we can to sort of educate people on queer issues.
Great.
Moral of the episode.
And we are now heading towards the end of this episode. So I would like to hear from you, as a part of your last words on this podcast, the moral of this episode.
I think what takeaway from this episode is that I'm sure that after listening to this podcast, a lot of other people in their colleges will come up with QCs, will be inspired, and we are open. Our Instagram is open. They can drop us an email, and we'll be very willing to help them with the procedures that they can follow in their colleges to set up a queer collective. I think the moral of this episode would be to start bringing visibility, start saying that we are here and we are queer.
Oh, wow. That sounds amazing.
Supplementary segment.
All right, wonderful. And as a part of the last segment of our show, wherein we give something back to our listeners, it can be something of value to remember this episode by. So, for this episode, I would like to recommend you to check out the HCQC official page on Instagram, which is called HC Queer Collective. And I would also like to recommend you to check out Sue's playlist on Spotify. Is it okay if I do that?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So the link to both these things, the Instagram handle of HCQC and Sue's playlist on Spotify, will be made available in the episode description. And if you think we missed a point, or if you would simply want to stay connected, You can reach out to us on Instagram on our personal Instagram accounts. I am called Gavish Raptor with GAVISH_RAPTOR. Sue, how can the listeners reach out to you?
So they can drop me an email at labsuyash@gmail.com, or they can connect with me on Instagram. My Instagram user ID is _SUESHEE_.
Great. And speaking of email, you can access my email through my Instagram, and I'm also available on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter with the same name. So if you could relate to the episode, don't forget to share it with everyone you know. And also, don't forget to follow the podcast to get the notification for the new episode every week. And lastly, thank you so much, Sue, for taking out time and agreeing to do this. It was a wonderful conversation.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It was a pleasure. I had a very good time doing this podcast.
Yes, and I'm looking forward to working with the HCQC after having been inducted.
Right. I'm so excited to meet all of you in the offline mode.
You were listening to the Skeptical Student Show by Gavish Raptor, created as a part of Podcast Lab by India Film Project in association with Anchor by Spotify.